So today we will want to have paper towel, a little bit of paper towel, some water, 2 dishes of water, 2 dishes of water, some paper towel, some brushes, and I have a 6, a 3, a 2, and I dropped my angle brush on the floor, so let me pick that one up, and my little angle brush, which I would say that might, if I was to give it a number, I might say it's a 5 or a 6. My water ready. So one for clear water, one for rinsing brushes. As I mentioned, your paper towel. Our colors today are black, purple, and ochre. If you don't have purple, blue and red mixed together makes purple. So you can make your own color too. And we are going to do varying depths of color. So some will be light purple, some will be darker. So hopefully you have your picture, your drawing already. It's a lot of boxes and a lot of lines. If you look at the finished product, it has windows and antennas and things. We are going to put that in after. Also, what would be handy if you can get it for yourself is a blow dryer. Before we start doing windows and different outlines, we'll want to make sure the background is completely dry. So we may or may not need to use that. Looks like there's a little bit of white in this picture, but there is no white. This is varying degrees of ochre and purples and grays. And we're also going to do some lifting off, which I have shown you that technique before, but we'll talk about that as we come to that. So it's just using a damp brush and lifting off color and wiping it off on paper towel, getting the brush wet again, tapping off the excess water and wiping again. So it's a practiced thing. So if you don't get it right the first time, not to worry about it. It takes time. It's okay. It's going to be good. It's going to work out fine. Yeah, I trust 100% that you're going to be great at this and it's going to look wonderful when you're done. So not to worry. And I say that to everyone. It's not to stress on where your lines are or whether the building is longer or shorter than the picture or what someone else's is or what your neighbor's is if you're painting with someone else. So it's all going to be okay. So with that said, welcome everyone. Welcome to those that are new that haven't been on before. Welcome, Bill. I know that you're new if you're on. And I am Cathy. I am the watercolor artist, and we will go through this cityscape one step at a time. That's how I handle this class or work together with you in this class. If for whatever reason I'm going too fast and you can't catch up, please open your mic and say something and I will slow down. We have lots of time, so not to panic. And just relax and enjoy the class. So this is the time, 1 hour of time that we spend together as like-minded artists, learning new tips and tricks and techniques and just being together as a group. So with that, if you have anything that's troubling you, anything in your mind, just set that aside in the parking lot for this 1 hour period of time. Give yourself this gift of time. Just let go of all of that. And I'm sure if it's important when you come back at the end of the class, you can deal with it then. But just give yourself this gift of time. And so we'll take 3 deep breaths in, and at the top of the breath, just hold it for a moment. That will put us in the present moment, here and now. And then release your choice, fast or slow. And then just drop your shoulders down as you release that breath. So we'll do that 3 times. So deep breath in and hold it and release. Drop those shoulders. Another deep breath in and hold it and release. Drop those shoulders down. And last time, deep breath in and hold it for a second and release. And drop those shoulders and just give those shoulders a little bit of a wiggle. If you feel some tightness in there, just let that go. This watercolor class is, in most cases, people are painting on watercolor paper. Please keep that in mind. This is just a piece of paper. If the first time you do this, you're not happy with it, you can repeat this process, do it again. You can even take a piece of paper and do it 4 to 6 to 8 times on one piece of paper. So it doesn't have to be wasting a piece of paper each time. So brushes I have a 6-pointed brush, a 3-pointed brush, a 2-pointed brush, and a little angle brush that might be a 5 or a 6. Paper towel. I like to have paper towel to wipe my brushes off with or to take some of the moisture off. 2 containers of water. One I keep clear. One I use for rinsing my brushes off. And of course our paint trays. Colors today will be diazinon violet or purple if you have it. If you do not have purple, red and blue mixed together make a nice purple. Ochre, which is yellow and brown mixed together if you do not have ochre, and a black, which we will do some graying, we'll be thinning it out a little bit, and it will be a gray color. In some cases, black, it's just solid black. And just like all of you, I will start with, I've got the drawing, but it's a plain canvas, so I will start with that as well. If you have a blow dryer handy, might be nice to get that close by. Then we may need to use that. I'm not sure yet, but we may. So if you have it, good. And my picture, hopefully you can see that. Tip my camera a little bit. There you can see the whole thing. And now we'll start to play with color. So firstly, I'm starting with my number 3 brush, my number 3-pointed brush. Dipping in water, going into my diazinon violet, and we're going to paint 3 of our apartment buildings purple. So I've got this funny one on the side. I'm going to paint the whole part of this building purple, all the way down to where it stops at that little building. And again, if you don't have a building drawn there, that's okay. Don't worry about it. If you're going all the way down, that's fine. But we're doing wet on dry. So this is wet paint on a dry surface. That way I have more control over the top of that building and down the side. And I'm going to come right to the bottom and right to the outer edge in the case of this building. So we're going to do 3 buildings in this purple color. So this is the first of 3. And again, not to hold your breath, just breathe naturally. If you find you're tensing up, take a deep breath and just release it. There's lots of little boxes here we're going to paint, so sometimes that stresses people. And I'm not worried about if I go out of the lines a little bit on one side or the other. I'm not worried about it. I'm also not worried. If you look really close, some of my purple is different. It's lighter or darker in some spots. I'm okay with that. Buildings, when they get wet, when they weather, they change. Sometimes over time they look different. Now I've got another building in the center that has some little tower things on the top, and I'm actually going to paint those purple too. I've got those 3 little, I guess it's like an air conditioner or a hood fan on top of that building. And I'm coming right down the side And it's got a little cutout because there's a building in front of that building. So this is an interesting description of buildings and distance and looking what's in front and what's behind. And this goes right, again, this one goes right down to the bottom. And if I go outside of my lines, that's okay. I give you permission to go out of the lines. This is not about perfection. So when you can see some of mine's lighter and some of it's darker, it's not completely square. I'll have an opportunity on the building beside it to adjust that if I need to fix that where I've gone over the line. That's okay. And I like to go in odd numbers. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Our brains, and I've said this before, but for those that are new, our brains naturally can compute things that are even numbers, but odd numbers make us linger a little longer. And that's one of the purposes behind our art, is to have people linger a little longer to enjoy what we've done. And as I mentioned, I like to work in threes, so I'm going to go up to the top of my canvas on the outside edge and just make this building purple as well, right up to the top, just the top corner. And if you don't have a building there or your building's wider than what I'm painting, that's okay. Just paint it. We're just working in threes. If it's not identical, that's okay. It can be your city. It doesn't have to be exactly mine. So when you can see that I'm working in different areas, so it gives opportunity for those areas that I painted already to dry. So I'm not interfering and having colors blend or mess up a line. Now next I'm going to work with black. So this is just straight black, no blending required. And I have a building here. This is my building here. I'm going around that little stack, coming up the other side. In between the two buildings, I have a gray. So I'm going to leave that spot. If I've covered on it, I can lighten that up later. But I'm just going to paint this area black. So we're going to work in threes. So this is one, and we'll do two more buildings black. And I know for some of you, when I draw some of the drawings and they have a lot of lines in them, they're tricky for some people. I took a drafting course, and it's attractive to me, these squares and these lines. So that's partly why I can be detailed in that area. So my second building black is down in the far corner, and it's got those stacks on the top, coming right across and down. So, and I didn't take the drafting course recently. I took the drafting course when I was in high school, believe it or not. And I excelled at it and I loved it. It's not where I got my artistic ability, but it certainly has helped for dimensions and angles. And hopefully our building, our purple building in the center is dry. And so I'm going to put a black building right beside that one. And that one too comes right down to the bottom. So this is my third black one. So at this point we have 3 purple buildings. And we will have 3 black buildings. So we're balanced with our odd numbers. And if you're ready, we'll move on to ochre. So this is just straight ochre. And if you don't have ochre or you're not sure what color ochre is a mixture of yellow and brown. That makes a sort of tawny color, more yellow than brown. And I'm going to do this corner, this outside building in ochre, coming straight down. At this point, that my very first purple building should be dry. So I'll be able to sit that color right at the top of the building. And if I go over a little bit on the edge, I'm not worrying about it. Please remember, it's just a piece of paper. Sometimes a piece of paper just wants to be a piece of paper. It actually doesn't want to be a piece of art. So, you know, maybe the next piece of paper will work better. So I have ochre on the corner. So now I want 2 more. So I have a line that I've joined between these 2 buildings, but I'm going to eliminate that line. I'm just going to paint ochre right over it because I want this ochre to go all the way down to the bottom. I want this to be a very tall building from bottom all the way up to the top. So if you have a line dividing, ignore that line, just paint right over it. With us painting a solid ochre color, that line should disappear. Or if it doesn't disappear and it still remains a visible line, that's okay too. We're going to put some windows on this building and we may be able to cover that with a line. So this ochre is coming all the way down right alongside that purple building. Just sitting at the top of that black building, trying not to interfere with that color. Again, this is wet paint on dry so that we have more control. Just small feathery strokes and getting a little bit more paint each time. Still using my number 3 pointed brush. And I'm going to leave a gap between this ochre building that I just painted. I'm leaving a gap, that purple building, and above it will stay white for now. And I'm going to put ochre right beside that black. And that will come all the way down as far as it goes until it hits a line. So that would bottom out here. I don't have a line on the right-hand side, but I do have a line on the other side. But I can recreate that. So because I've painted over, and if you've painted over it, not to worry. We're still working in threes. We have 3 purples, we have 3 blacks, we have 3 ochres. And so let's start to make a new color. We can take black and thin it out, add a lot of water, and make it a light gray color. And as long as it's a lighter color than the black that you've done, it will work. So I'm adding a lot of water. I don't want it to be completely wispy that I don't see it, but I do want it to be a lighter black or gray. So we'll do 3 buildings in this gray color. So I'm going to go between this purple building in between the purple. So you can see it's a gray building, but it's not dark gray. It's just sort of a smoky gray. And we're going to find 3 places where we will put this gray. So I'm moving upward with my gray between the 2 ochres. And yes, there's still a little gap between. So if you want to leave that white line, that's okay. If for whatever reason you fill it in, not to worry, we'll come back and we'll adjust that. And again, not to think that every stroke needs to be perfect. If there's lighter or darker patches in your building, that's perfectly natural to what happens in real life. Water hits, things splat, stuff happens. And one more gray on the other side. You get an interesting color when you mix black and ochre together. So we're mixing black and ochre. So it's the same 2 colors that we've got in our picture, but now we're blending a couple of them together. So black and ochre, I'm just going to come down the side of this building, this little tiny building. So it's not gray and it's not black. It's almost an olivey color. Black and ochre together.
Thank you.
It was a really interesting color. So black and ochre. It almost is like a green color. If you ever get the chance to sit in the middle and see what colors you can make by blending before it's gray, it's interesting to try. So while you're finished catching up, I will read the card for today, our inspiration card. This says, low self-esteem is like driving through life with your hand brake on, by Maxwell Maltz. Compose a letter to your future self. Who do you think you'll be 10 years from now? Interesting to see who we think or where we think we would be in 10 years from now. It seems like a long time off, but it's surprising how fast it goes. So just read that again. Low self-esteem is like driving through life with your handbrake on, by Maxwell Maltz. And I guess he's suggesting that instead of having a handbrake on, let's put the pedal to the metal and see where we want to be in the future and do something about it so that we can actually progress towards that. So thanks for the people. There was a few people that all said at the same time, yes, they want that card. So thank you for those that chose that card. And we'll carry on. So I have my mixture of ochre and black, and I'm going to do 3 buildings in that color. So I'm going to do this next one. Oh, I'm doing that little tower. And down the side. It just has a little narrow spot showing. So I'm going right over top of it because I am going to paint black on top of it once it's dry. So still, I need one more ochre and black, just making a fresh little puddle of that. So a third building, I'm going to do this outside building in the same color. This is ochre and black mixture. This is my third one. Again, still working in thirds. Or not in thirds, in threes, groupings of 3. And if, because I mixed another little fresh puddle of it, it's a little bit darker, I'm not worried about it. If I want to, which I will, I'll go back and I'll just touch up my other buildings just because the color changed just slightly. So at this point on mine, I have 6 buildings left. If you have more or less, not a problem, but we'll do our next set of 3. I'm going to make a little puddle with my purple and add water. I want it to be a lighter, a light purple, really faded. So I'll do this little one down the bottom. So you can see it has some color, but it's not really visible. It's fairly light. It's just light, like a lavender. I've got another one here. I'm going to do the same. And then this little building that sticks out in the middle of nowhere. So I have one here at the bottom and one here. And I'm going to carry this one all the way down to the black. It's got a little bit of a line in between, but I'm going to do the whole thing. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that leaves me 3 still to do. It's a watered down purple, really light, like a lavender that you can see it, that it has a color, but it's almost a pinky. We have 3 more to do. Take a deep breath. Just drop those shoulders down. We only have 3 more to do, and then we can start doing some details. And these last 3, I'm going to do an ochre, but I'm watering down my ochre. So it's going to be really, it'll be like a bit of a yellow color. So this one I painted in a light ochre, and this one I have not painted. So you can see that this is still white and this is ochre. Then I'll do that next one in that light ochre, just really light. I can paint over top of that air conditioner, compressor, or whatever it is on top of the building, on top of that antenna, because I am going to paint that black so that it really stands out after. So there I've got my second ochre here. This is just ochre thinned with water. Just really light. Yep, we're not mixing any colors. Just put a little puddle of ochre and add some water. So we have 3 of those. So I have 1, I have 2, and I've got a white spot up here. This is my last spot. I'm going to do this in that light ochre as well. So in a couple of strokes, I've picked up a little bit of the side colors, so it's adding a little bit of difference in the color in the building. I'm not worried about that. I think that's going to be look perfectly natural. So if you don't have the same number of boxes, that's okay. If you've got a nice blend of colors already and you're missing a box that's already filled in with some other color, that's okay. It's not important to try to take anything off, just leave it, and we'll start to fill in some of the windows. So I'm switching from my number 3 to my number 2 pointed brush, just because it has a smaller, but less bristles and a smaller, tighter point. And if I get too much paint on the tip of my brush and it seems heavy, I'm just going to roll my brush in my fingers and roll it on my tray and just have paint on the tip of my brush. So I just roll it on my tray. So we're going to start to work with this, the building on the far side. And I'm just going to put some lines going up the building. I'm trying to make them as straight as possible, but I'm working backwards. So if mine aren't perfectly straight, my apologies. So no, it's just black. So we're making the look of balconies on the building. Just plain black. They're just a line, just to look like balconies. If this looks a little bit different than the picture that's up there, we may change a few things, but we'll just go through building by building and just add. And if some of the buildings have nothing on them, that's okay. It's all right to leave some plain. So the building above that, I'm going to put some little windows in purple. It's already purple, but now when I introduce fresh purple, it's going to be darker. So I'm just going to put some rectangular windows going up that building. So as I said, I'm working backwards. So let me put this where I can actually see it. So I'm just doing little squares or rectangles. And if some are bigger than others, it's okay. If some are lighter or darker than others, it's okay. It's the symbol of the look of lights or windows in a building. We are doing an abstract, so it's not to be completely perfect. It's okay if it's not. I'm going to switch to my angle brush. The building beside this one, I'm going to put some dots and dashes. And the color that I'm using is that ochre and black that I've got that I had mixed. So it's ochre and black on this purple building. And I'm just going to put some dots and dashes. So I can put a straight dash and a dot beside, a straight dash, and I can do them on different sides. I can go lighter or darker, wider, thinner. I'm just making the look of from a distance. I've got some activity in the building.
Is the color that you use black, Kathy?
This is ochre and black mixed together.
Oh.
It's that color that we use, that color that we made. And if something happens and one of your lines gets crooked or longer than the other one, make it a full line. Don't worry that it's not the same as all the other ones. So some can be wider and some can be more narrow. Don't worry about the antenna yet. We will come back to the antenna. You can just go over it and we will paint over it as well. We'll paint the antenna over that as well. Next, I'm going to move to purple and I'm going back to my two pointed brush. And I've got this ochre building, this long ochre building that goes all the way down to the bottom. And I want to have windows from top to bottom on this building. So I'm using purple, just straight purple, and I'm doing fine lines, really tiny lines. And I'm hoping that they're straight as you can make them. If some are wider, some are narrower, that's okay. I'm just bringing those lines all the way down. They're going to come all the way down to the bottom. So I'm continuing on. And when I come to that black building, I'm only doing a half a line. That's all you can see because that black building is in front of it. And again, if some of those end up wider or thicker than the other ones, maybe it's a balcony, maybe it's a divide in the building, it's yours. This is your city, so it can be whatever you want it to be. Now we've got that purple building in the center, and this is where we're going to do some lifting off. So I'm using my number 2 pointed brush. I'm tapping it in my, touching it in my water, and then tapping the excess water off on my paper towel. And I'm going to make a little tiny square. I'm going to do 2 on the top of this building. So I'm just rubbing. I'm rubbing with my brush, and you can see the paint is getting lighter and lighter. And so I'm going to make that just with the tip of my brush. I'm going to try and make that into a square, just with a dampened brush. And then I'm going to do another window beside that one, do the same thing. I'm taking off paint, just making that into a square, just by lifting off paint. I'm going to do 4 of them in a row, coming down the building. So we're lifting off. So dampen your brush, tap it off on paper towel, and come back onto the paint and use the tip of your brush, and the paint will have no choice but to move. Once you get the paint on your brush, tap it off on your paper towel, clean your brush, tap the excess water, and start again. So I'm actually going to do 5 coming down this building, 5 little squares on the one side. Then I'm going to continue and match up the other side. This takes a little bit of practice, this lifting off. But this way we're creating windows without actually painting them on. So this is a really great technique if you're trying to make a light spot on a ladybug, or a light spot on a leaf, or a light spot if you're painting a vehicle, if you're trying to make a sunspot in some other picture. So there I have 10 windows now on my building. That I've created just by lifting off. Now I'm going to leave this part and do a stripe down my building. I want, this is where the elevator might be. So I'm just doing a panel. So I'm just, with a damp brush, I'm pulling that paint down, lifting it off. So now I have a stripe on my building. This would be where the elevator would be. And maybe I have a second elevator down the other side, coming right down to the bottom. So that's just by using a damp brush and lifting off paint. So if it's not completely straight, it can be adjusted later, but we're just looking for that nice white space. So with black paint, lightened down to be a gray color, I'm going to put some stripes or balconies, wider stripes on the side. So this is just with gray. On my second ochre building, I'm doing just some wide stripes. These are just balconies. I'm not seeing a window. I'm just doing a balcony. This is gray, just gray on the ochre. So it will look a little bit different because the ochre is underneath it, but it's just gray. And mine aren't completely straight. That's okay. I'm really not too worried about it. This is abstract, so just the idea of a balcony. They really are crooked, aren't they? If I move over to my building that is that light ochre, I'm going to use solid ochre and do some more dots and dashes. So this is on the ochre building, just using fresh ochre, not watered down. So I really haven't, I've made some new colors, but I haven't deviated from the colors that I started with. I have ochre and purple and black, and I've just done some mixing of different colors throughout. So by now the top of that building should be dry where I have my antenna way over the far side. So I'm going to pop in my antenna and I'm going to paint the little boxes on top of my roof. Even though I painted that purple, I'm going to paint that black now, just so it stands out. This is just some equipment on the tops of the buildings. This one that is already ochre on the ochre building with the black background, I'm going to leave it alone. But I'm going to do the antenna on the building underneath it. And it's got some equipment on the roof that I'm going to paint. Little stack. I've got a tiny roof here on top of this little ochre building. Some more equipment on my other building. And while I've still got black on my brush, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to paint in some little windows at the far edge of this little building where I just put the antenna. So just on the one side, I'm putting on some windows. I'm leaving the other side open. So that's just with black. And lastly, I'm going to take purple and make some really wide balconies on my far purple building, just still using purple. So I'm putting purple on purple, but because this is fresh color, it's going to be darker. And so it's okay for some of those buildings to sit with nothing on them, or if you feel like they need a touch of something, you can take some ochre and just run it down the side of the building. This building here in the middle, that's lavender. We could just add just some little dots that look like windows. And what's left to do is to decide where are you going to put your artist's signature. So I'm going to sign right on my building on my gray. But there's your cityscape, and that's what you can do in 1 hour. As I said, you can continue to work, you can adjust, you can make your lines straighter, you can add more colors, embellish on some of the architectural work of the building. That's entirely up to you, but you've got the idea. I hope you enjoyed trying something new and working with that lifting off technique for the windows. And we'll see you next week.